Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Charles Schwab DFS Tactics show. We have quite a bit to get into, including some final piece of research that I kind of left you all hanging with on Monday night on the Data Dive show. So let's not waste any time. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there for anything golf related statistically. Course, architect, I can't say enough great things about it. I would not be able to do what I do without them. It is the best tool out there. It's going to make you a much better gambler, a much smarter DFS player. Go check them out. It's well worth your investment. In the descriptions of all three streaming service videos, there are links to my social media where I place my betting cards, like I will after the show this evening for the Charles Schwab, and then any interesting research that I find throughout the week for golf and also the baseball content that I've started to put out. I left a kind of a did you know on my social media on Twitter some unique facts about the winners of the Charles Schwab going back to 2012, and I mentioned that there were 10 players that qualify under those metrics in the field this week, and I mentioned that on the Data Dive show Monday. So in the comments, let me know, do you think you have an idea on who those players are? Reply to me on social media. Be curious to see if you all can guess who those players are. But if you want to be a part of any of that interesting research, or if you would like to see me do that research kind of live, let me know in the comments as well. Or reach out to me on social media, Twitch, whatever. Let me know that that you want to see that live, and I'd be more than willing to do that. It would be on a Tuesday for sure, but if you're interested in that, let me know. And then finally, we are live. Chat's open. I want to hear from you all. Who do you all think wins this week? Do you have any favorite plays? Any favorite fades? Who are you looking at in the 6Ks? All that good stuff. So let's dig right in and figure out our tactics for the DFS slate for the 2022 Charles Schwab. And as I mentioned, we are going to first start with the little bit of research that I left you all off with Monday night. And I mentioned how that I was not going to get into a level of masochism to go through each player and gain or find their, upper end putting and all that stuff. Well, I went and decided to be a masochist on Tuesday, yesterday. So what I've done here is all of these tournaments up here at the top are on bent greens. So dating back to the Memorial last year, which is next week, dating back to the Memorial, these are all the tournaments that are on bent, and any player in the field here over here this week and their performance at said tournament. So, for example, Michael Thompson lost 7/10 of a stroke putting that week at the Memorial. And then he gained 9.9 at the Byron Nelson and all the way down. This is Bryson, and then there's another blacked out name, Bubba, who has withdrawn. So, but I've got this sorted by this column of difference, and I'll explain that here in a bit. But the best column here lists just the absolute spike, the highest amount that the player has had in the previous year on bent greens. So you can see Michael Thompson actually leads in that category at 9.9. I believe there was So Bo Hostler has a 9.4. That was from the Fortinet, the first event of the PGA Tour season. So on and so forth. So you've got some big spikes in there as well. And then I also did an average of the person's total throughout all those events. So just to use Michael Thompson, he had a 9.9 at the Byron Nelson. But across all of the bent green tournaments, he averaged 0.86, a little less than one stroke gained per tournament on the greens. So this tells you that his outliers are quite severe, and in this case it was a good one, a very good outlier. So that's why I have sorted here on the difference column The players who have a huge spike between their best and their average. And that's essentially what I was trying to get to Monday evening in the data show, to prove or to show the players that had this capability, because the winners of the Charles Schwab don't necessarily have to have good putting form coming in, but all of the putters that have won, or all of the players that have won, have at least shown a propensity to get really hot. I mean, really, really hot, 8.5, 9, and so on and so forth. And if they don't, then they're hitting their irons around here extremely, extremely well. But this is an explanation of why I didn't put any putting in the mixed condition model, because their putting form is not requisite coming here to Colonial. So I just wanted to get a gauge, I mean, for my own sake, of who some of these spike performers are. So you got Michael Thompson, James Hahn. Max Homa has a 7.6 when he won the Wells Fargo, but he's also got a -7 from when he didn't do so well at the BMW last year. So he's got a wide range of outcomes. And then you come down here further. Like, I'll come down here closer to the bottom. This is Bubba. But for example, somebody like Patrick Reed, generally a pretty darn good putter. Now, he did lose 2.3 3 weeks ago at the Wells Fargo, but someone who's generally a pretty good putter, they're not going to have their the big variation, the big spike. Somebody else that came to mind was Billy Horschel. If I can find him, he's around here somewhere. He didn't have a very big spike either. Jordan Spieth, generally a pretty good putter, just doesn't, and he's not really the greatest on bent. So he doesn't have the biggest of spikes. Billy Horschel, generally a pretty good putter. He doesn't have the biggest of spikes because his average is good. And so when he spikes, it's more of a 4 or a 5 as opposed to an 8.5. So that's all this is showing the maximum of a player's strokes gained putting on a bent green tournament in the past year, and then comparing that to his average across all those tournaments. So do with this data what you will. It's there for you. This doesn't mean that I'm going to consider Michael Thompson, I would, if there's a tiebreaker, I should clarify this. If there's a tiebreaker, I'll probably use Michael Thompson just because of this ability to get scorching hot with the putter. But it doesn't mean that I'm looking or making an excuse to throw him in a lineup. If it's between him and someone else relatively around the same price, I might consider Thompson in that scenario because of this. But by no means am I rushing to use Michael Thompson in a lineup. Same for James Hahn. I mean, same really for Max Homa. If Max Homa happens to fall in the price range of this team that I'm trying to create, and it's between him and somebody else, then I might lean Max Homa because of this. But it's certainly not a reason alone to use Max Homa. So hopefully that makes sense. Just wanted to show that to you all. That's the last bit of detail or research that I had done yesterday, and I didn't show it Monday night in the Data Dive show, obviously because I hadn't done it yet. So I felt like I needed to show you all that as well. So with that, I'm going to close this file out. Let's move to the mixed condition model that I made for this week. And right off the bat, you'll see that there is a windy metric here. We're going to look into that. Let me change the focus for y'all. We're going to look at Wind Finder here in a bit. Turns out that there is what I think is another pretty significant split in terms of the field. You saw that at the PGA. Even though Justin Thomas was on the wrong side of the field, the majority of the field that made the cut was in the Thursday AM, Friday PM split. So again, I see another split this week, but we'll get into that. So the final missed condition model that I came in with, I put 5% in strokes gained total difficult to par, and we looked a lot at difficult metrics this week, but Looking back at it, the rounds were in between difficult and average about the same number of times. Now it's gotten more difficult recently, even though there's been an easy round thrown in here or there. More consistently, there have been more difficult rounds than average rounds, but it is still pretty evenly split. So I only put 5% in strokes gained total on difficult. I didn't want to put too much weight into it, especially since there were a lot of metrics that I wanted to add a lot more percent than I could. So I put 5% here, put 10% in the moderate and windy. We'll see that here in a bit and why. If there's one statistic that I might be too much in, is strokes gained approach. If you followed me for any time, you know that is my preferred statistic. Anytime I have any leftover percentage at all, even remotely thought about, I'll throw it into here. It's just my preferred statistic. I might be a touch heavy on that this week, but I still think with strokes gained approach being a half a shot more important compared to the average full field tour course. I was wanting to put 15, and then I put 20, and then realized that I kind of ran out of percent. But once I had 20% in there and I thought about it, it just made a lot of sense. Approach and putting are the two big factors at Colonial. And if I'm not going to have any putting metrics in the final mixed condition model, then I definitely need to highlight the approach. So that was the line of thinking there. Excuse me. And then you have opportunities gained on difficult or in difficult rounds. I mentioned how I wasn't going to be focusing on birdies or bogeys. This was going to be a pure opportunities gained week for that tab. And a part of the reason why I did not put more percentage in strokes gained total difficult is because I have opportunities and greens both when it's difficult. So I kind of hedged, if you will, a little bit and splitting out the strokes gained total in a couple different ways. So to see, who gives themselves the best or the most opportunities when it is difficult, who hits the greens when it's difficult. So I kind of hedged there a little bit. And if you wanted to put maybe 10% here and get rid of one of these or whatnot, wouldn't disagree with you. Like I said, it's just me hedging a bit and getting as many metrics in as I could. We talked all week how the majority of approach shots are at Colonial supposedly come from 125 to 150 and 150 to 175. But when we dug into it Monday night, I just wasn't confident that there was a lot of data to back that up, or at least to make you think it was significant. Instead, I saw total proximity, and I put that at 15%, especially because with putting being so important, the number of 25 footers, 15 to 20 footers, all of that being higher than the tour average here, proximity is going to be pretty darn important. So I put a full 15% in that. I just think total prox is going to be the thing to look at this week. And then par 3s, 4s, and 5s. I mentioned par 3s. I was only going to look at this length. I never debated anything other than this length and at 5%. The same with the par 5s. I never debated anything a specific length, and I never debated about putting more than 5% in it. The par 5s are just mitigated here, and even though there are still 4 par 3s here at Colonial, with them being supposedly roughly the same importance as 4s and 5s, I didn't see that in the data when I showed it to you by the Excel spreadsheet, so I put that at 5%. Instead, I really hedged on these par 4s. So 10% in all of par 4s, and then another 10% broken out for 350, 400, and 10% 400, 450. So really, I would say I've got probably 20 to 25% in all of par 4s, and then 10% in these specific ranges of par 4s, because we saw that the strokes gained par 4 in this bucket for Colonial is something like 9/10 more important than the average full field tour course. This was 7/10 or so. So just astronomically important here at Colonial versus other courses. So that was the reasoning behind that. And it's not to say that the shorter and the long par 4 won't play a factor either. Just a lot of emphasis on par 4. So if there's a weakness here, it's going to be too much strokes gain approach and too much par 4 emphasis, too much weight into that. If a traditionally good putter wins, it is going to not be reflected in this mixed condition model. And I never considered anything around the green, especially from the graphs that I had saw or I had seen. English is always my specialty throughout the week, and it backed up in the data that I collected. So with all that being said, the reveal of my rankings goes like this. Justin Thomas, number 1. Scotty Scheffler, number 2. Will Zalatoris, number 3. Spieth, Mito, Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, Brian Harman, Max Homa, and Nate Lashley. So a lot of these probably make sense. Harman might be a bit of a surprise, but he's been playing well. The one surprise is probably Nate Lashley, but we talked about him quite a bit Monday, and he kept popping on these filters. So I am really, really high on Nate Lashley. You see the price here. I'm all about some Nate Lashley this week. So that is probably going to be the flag that I plant in the ground and die on. But I just love me some Nate Lashley this week. I mean, you see the numbers here. I mean, he's almost top 30 in strokes gained approach in a loaded field. Number 7 in the short par 4s. Top 30 in the medium length par 4s. He's just good at par 4s in general. He's getting heightened by the added emphasis in par 4s, sure. But he's been really good with the proximity. He is very good from the length of par 3s. The greens are a little suspect, and he does not play great when it's difficult. But he doesn't have a bad statistic across here. He might not be elite like Justin Thomas, first, seconds, thirds, and whatnot, but he really does not have a bad statistic. His worst one is just kind of middling. So yeah, there's a lot to like with Nate Lashley. So there's my top 10 in rankings. Let's not worry too much about my personal rankings. Let's go through the price board here and talk about projected ownerships. So we have 6 players in the 10Ks. There's Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, Will Zalatoris, and Victor Hovland. Right now, you have got the most projected owned player, the 2nd and 4th. So the most projected owned player, Jordan Spieth, former winner here at Colonial, Texas native, makes a whole lot of sense, especially at the price. Coming off a very good Byron Nelson and a middling PGA, but there's a lot to like here. He's not good at the length of the par 3s, and that's it. Everything else that I think is going to play extremely important this week at Colonial, he's there. So yeah, he's projected at 20%, quite high. So I'm still going to use Jordan Spieth, but seeing him at 20%, I'm not going to say it's a fade, but if I have a reason to come into a Will Zalatoris or a Colin Morikawa, I will because of the 20%. The second most projected owned player in the field this week is Colin Morikawa. Makes sense. He played this event well last year when he played it. It's the only time he's played it. A lot to like. It's a course that doesn't require distance, which means his iron should be emphasized quite a bit. He's number 1 when it's difficult, number 1 in opportunities when it's difficult, number 1 in greens when it's difficult. So if the difficulty of the course is ratcheted up this week, Colin Morikawa is just that much better of a play. So I like Colin Morikawa this week. And then the 4th most projected on player is Victor Hovland. He rates 6th in my model, so the numbers love him. I am cautious with Hovland. It's not that I won't use him. I'm cautious. The par fours are a little bit left to be desired. And if the course really does play difficult, yes, he is 20th in strokes gained total difficult to par. But if it is indeed difficult, that means that around the green could come more into play than what I am giving it credit for. And Victor Hovland is just not good around the green. Again, this is kind of a gut feeling here. He's not the greatest of putters anyway, and he's not good in the wind. For being from Norway, he's just not good in the wind. Now, the putting has gotten a little bit better. He was slightly under field average at the PGA. The CJ Cup, he gained a bunch in the fall. So the putting is getting better. But it's one of those gut feelings. I'm just cautious with Hovland this week. And he's the fourth most projected on player. The other three in the 10Ks are all above 10%. But surprisingly, at least to me, Will Zalatoris is the lowest projected owned at 11%, or excuse me, at 10%. I don't see anything wrong with Will Zalatoris. His worst stat, at least of the ones that I think are going to play quite heavily this week, is opportunities when it's difficult. He's number 1 in strokes gained approach in this field, number 2 in the wind. If you're getting Will Zalatoris at 10%, which I don't think you will, I think that's going to be closer to 15, maybe even upwards of 17, 18%. But if you are indeed getting Will Zalatoris at 10%, I would fire that up quickly. I am a little skeptical that it's going to be, or that it's going to end at 10%, but I really like Will Zalatoris. And then Justin Thomas and Scotty Scheffler. I am a little concerned with Justin Thomas about the hangover from the PGA. He's here, he's playing. I don't think there's any denying that he is talented enough to win. Obviously, he just won the PGA, but I'm a little bit concerned about the PGA hangover. So I'm not going to tell you to full fade Justin Thomas, but that's where my caution with Justin Thomas is. And Scotty Scheffler, it's just, both of these two, it's just the price as well. 11,000 is pretty hefty if you're trying to come in and get another, upper end player. Going Thomas and then, Abraham Answer or Sungjae or Max Homa, that's difficult to do. It's just difficult to do. So, in the 10Ks, again, if Will Zalatoris is sitting at 10%, I'm going to stick with Will Zalatoris as my number 1 choice. I think it's going to be more closely to 15 for him. But given where we're at, I'm going to put Zalatoris number 1. I'm probably going to put probably Morikawa second, Spieth third, Hovland fourth. Yes, I'm cautious on him, but it's not that I'm not going to use him. It's just like I said, a kind of a gut feeling. Scheffler and Thomas are 5th and 6th only because of their pricing. I mentioned Thomas, the slight PGA hangover he might have, and again he might just go F around and win back-to-back tournaments. I'll never pick a guy to win back-to-back tournaments. That's something that that's just one of the criteria I lose to. But for DFS purposes, Justin Thomas is a fine play, 13%. So it's not that you're getting a whole lot of uniqueness out of him, but you're gonna have to find some price savings somewhere if you're using Justin Thomas. So there's a look at the 10Ks. Let's move to the 9s. You have Sam Burns, Max Homa, Abraham Answer, Sungjae, Tony Finau, Daniel Berger, Taylor Gooch. No, excuse me. Daniel Berger is it. So you have, 6 players here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so same number of 9Ks as you do in the 10s. You'll see that I have Berger unstarred, even though he's 12th in the data model. Talked about this Monday. Just prove that you're healthy. Joey, how you doing? Thanks for jumping in chat. How's your week been? You got your lineups ready? Have you put any wagers in yet either? So hopefully your week's going well. Thanks for jumping in chat and watching. But I mentioned Monday in the Data Dive show, like with Berger, just prove to me you're healthy and I'll start to believe again. But until you do that, just not even going to consider you. Elsewhere here in the 10 or in the 9Ks, this feels like this is the kind of the coin toss area. Your fellow contestants are coming into here, but who they are using is really varied. You have 13% from Abraham Answer and Daniel Berger, so that's a full fade for me on Daniel Berger if he's at 13%. Oh, sick kiddo. I'm sorry to hear that, Joey. Hopefully all goes well with the little one, rests and recovers. But seeing Berger at 13% and with the health issues, I'm just, no thank you. So you have Abraham Answer at 13%, Homa's approaching 13%, Finau's close to 13%. So you have Sungjae at 9.5 and Sam Burns at 10.5. I kind of like Sungjae this week. The irons haven't been good, yes. He is not the best at giving himself opportunities when it's difficult, but yet he plays difficult courses well, so he's more of a bogey avoider as opposed to a birdie kidder. He does hit a bunch of greens when it's difficult. Again, just the boring green 2-putt par Sungjae. I think if the more the course gets ratcheted in difficulty, the better Morikawa is going to be, the better Sungjae is going to be. So a stack that I really like if I'm leaning into the difficult narrative is Morikawa Sungjae. But I like Sungjae a bit this week. Homa I'm fine with. I've been on Homa seemingly for a little bit. Hit him at the Wells Fargo was fortunate. I still like Homa. He's playing well. It's not that he didn't play the PGA well. He's just kind of stuck in neutral. He shot, I think, +1 for the entire tournament. Only 6 shots behind Justin Thomas, so he's still playing good. I really like Finau this week, and that really, really scares me because normally I am just completely away from Tony Finau, and I really like Finau. That's really, really scary for me. But number 3 in proximity this week, and Finau, surprisingly, actually putts bent somewhat okay. He has long been known to, be balky with the putter, but he's good when it's difficult. He's very good in the wind. He's coming in off 2 straight tournaments with bent greens where he's gained strokes in putting. You see the irons here; they're just in fuego right now. I mean, yes, at the Wells Fargo they were dog shit, but 8.2 at Mexico, 6.5 at Genesis. He hadn't lost before then, dating back to the playoffs last year. He's been really, really good with the irons. The putter is hot by Tony Finau's sake right now. So there's a lot to like with Finau this week. And like I mentioned, it's just kind of scary for me. But I like Finau. Burns, okay. I'm just indifferent. Don't love it, don't hate it. Now I am fading Answer a little bit. 13%. Yes, he is, top 36, or he's 36th in my model, but he doesn't have a great stat here. His best one is top 30. It's proximity. Now he doesn't have a lot of atrocious stats. Like his worst one's 75th. I mean, he's just good at a lot of stuff, and then middling to slightly bad at the ones that he's not good at. So I don't know. Seeing him at 13% helps me fade Answer a little bit more than maybe I would be elsewise. But Answer's a bit of a fade for me this week. So I love Finau. That's very scary. Abraham Answer's a fade. That's scary. Burns, okay. Homa, I like. Sungjae, I like. And then I'm nowhere near Berger. So moving into the 8s, you have moving into the 8s. You have one player. Sorry, I saw 7,900s. You have one player that's getting a whole lot of use. And then again, a lot of your contestants are kind of all over the area here in the 8s. It's kind of like the 8s and the 9s. Your fellow contestants seem to be using one of the 3 up here, either Morikawa, Spieth, or Hovland. And then coming down and using A9 and an 8, but it is all over the board on which ones they're using. So the one player getting a whole lot of love is Kevin Na. Makes a whole lot of sense. Former champion here. Course sets up well for him. Now he does have quite a few ugly statistics that I think will hinder him, but there is no denying his previous form here at Colonial. He won in 2019. You've seen the irons here at this place. He missed the cut in 2020, but I mean, look at the irons here at this place. It's just ridiculous. He loves this course, and this is a course where you either love it or you hate it, and clearly Kevin Na loves it. So a lot of people know that. A lot of people are going to be playing him. I'm going to be playing him. I'm going to try to limit the amount I'm playing him if he's going to be 16%. But it's a good play. Good plays are good plays. Remember, DeChambeau has withdrawn. Bubba has withdrawn. So elsewhere in the 8Ks, you're not getting any pivots. But Kevin Na is the only chalk as well. So in here, you have got Tommy Fleetwood at 13%. I like Tommy this week. I was off of him at the PGA. That was, I'll say, a semi-wrong call. He played pretty darn good. Top 15 in the wind. Number 2 at one of the links of the par 5s. Top 5 when it's difficult. The irons haven't been there, but I still think they're better than what they're showing. Plenty to like with Tommy Fleetwood. You have Mito, 11.5. Davis Riley's getting a whole lot of love at 12.5%. I mean, I like it. The irons have been suspect, but otherwise it's been great. And I was on Davis Riley early this season. At the Waste Management, might have been the Sony. I've been using some Davis Riley this season, and he's been part of some really, really high finishing lineups. But at 13%, I don't like the percentage. Like the player, I don't like the percentage. Billy Horschel is the lowest projected owned player here at 9%. I like Webb Simpson, even though he doesn't rate out the highest in my data model. If he is back to anywhere near Webb Simpson form that he showed at the PGA, again, it was only one tournament, but I mean, it was Webb Simpson back from the dead. He's been nowhere to be found this year, and then he comes to the PGA and plays well. Pay attention to Webb Simpson. If you want to be cautious, absolutely don't use him. Like, there's enough reason not to use him. I'm going to try to be early on the player as opposed to be late. So I'm going to have some Webb Simpson this week. Probably it might backfire, but I have a sneaky suspicion that he's top 20 when it's difficult. Gives himself plenty of opportunities when it's difficult. He's top 25 in the wind. I have a sneaky suspicion that if PGA Championship Webb last week is the start of him, coming back to form, you're definitely going to want to be on him earlier than later, sooner rather than later. All that, because his price is going to jump, his ownership's going to jump. He's only at 9.5%. So I'm going to have some Webb Simpson this week. Mito. It all depends on how you think he's going to... Do you think he bounces back from the 72nd hole disaster and puts it behind him? If you do, fire him up. If you think that's going to be a burden on him, then don't use him. I wish I could give you more analysis than that. It is what it is. The numbers say it should be good. I mean, you never know. How's the player going to react or, come back from that kind of situation? If you could quantify that, you'd be a rich person, because that's something that has been tried to have been quantified a lot in the analytical world, and it's just not. I don't want to say it's not possible. It's not easy to do. So there's a look at the 8s. It's kind of like the 9s. You're not getting any big chalk except for Kevin Na. He is quite chalky. You're not getting a whole lot of chalk here in the 8s, but you're not getting any pivots either. So it seems like your contestants are using one of the big 3 in the 10Ks, Hovland, Spieth, or Morikawa. They're using somebody in the 9s, and they're using somebody in the 8s. So let's move to the high 7s here. High 7s is where a lot of people are going. So if they're not in the 8s, or if they're not in the 9s, they're probably using a couple of high 7s. Sorry. Couple of high 7s in here. So you've got Chris Kirk, Harold Varner III, Brian Harman, Munoz, and Hoagie, all above 14%. In between 14 to 15%, except for Harman. He's now projected to be the second most owned player. 17% on Brian Harman. I love Brian Harman this week. He's rated 8th. The irons are good. He's great at par 4s. Top 10 in opportunities when it's difficult. He plays difficult courses well. I love Brian Harman. 17% is so hard for me at least, to lock in. Especially since I like the players up here. I like Hovland. I like Spieth. I really like Morikawa this week. But you're going to have to find some uniqueness somewhere. I can maybe limit myself from Na. It's probably going to be difficult to limit myself from Harman. I just like Harman a lot. But understand, if you're using Harman, you're setting yourself up for a 5v5 or a 4v4, depending on who else you're using. So, because he's very, very popular. But those other 4 players, I mean, they're all getting used too. Chris Kirk, Harold Varner, Sebastian Munoz, Tom Hoagie. Your 2 pivots in the area, one of them I really, really like is Bezadenhout and Tringali. Both of them. Each of them, so Bezadenhout's at 5.5%. This feels like a Bezadenhout course. Really does. I like Bezadenhout this week. And I really like Cameron Tringali again this week. Number 12 or 12th best in the field in irons. 10th when it's windy. 7th best in the field in this loaded field. 7th best when it's difficult. There's a lot to like with Cameron Tringali. He's sitting at 7%. That is a pivot that I'll go to a lot, I'm sure. And as much as I like Tom Hoagie, at 14.5%, $100 less, I can get Tringali, who I like just as much, even though they're somewhat apart in the rankings. I like Tringali just as much. I'm gonna use Harold Varner a little bit, but spoiler or foreshadowing, I've got an outright ticket on HV3, so I'm probably going to limit my exposure to Harold Varner in that way and try to really limit it in DFS. Chris Kirk, 14.5% plus. I really like Chris Kirk. So that's going to be hard. Like, the upper 7s are where all the chalk is, and it's a lot of the players that I like too. So that's why I was really trying to highlight the Will Zalatoris, the upper 9s, the 8s, because even though they're getting used, they're not getting used as much as these upper 7s. Harold Varner, Brian Harman, Chris Kirk, these players up in here. And then McNeely I'm just kind of out on, but he is at 8.5%, so he's very unique for this area behind Tringali and Bezadenhout. So that's a look at the upper 7s. Let's go to the lower 7s. This is the area of the price board that's gotten completely ignored. People are coming down into the 6s, or they're building an ultra-balanced team with maybe using Hovland as their top. Literally nobody in the low 7s, from 7,400 to 7,000, nobody is above 8.5% projected ownership. This whole area is getting ignored. So in this range, Kevin Kisner loves this place. Now, his form is atrocious. I understand that. He's coming off 3 consecutive missed cuts. They have not been particularly pretty, although I would argue that the PGA he actually played pretty darn well. He gained in 3 of the 4 main or umbrella stats. He just didn't hit his irons very well. But I thought he played the PGA okay. And everybody knows his propensity to get hot with the flat stick. He does not need a course or he prefers a course not to be long. This is not a long course. He does struggle the most when it's difficult. Kisner likes Colonial. I would consider Kisner. There's enough reason to be out on him at the form and all that stuff. I would consider Kisner, especially since he's a pivot. Elsewhere in here, Matthew Neesmith is the 8.5%. I like Matthew Neesmith. A lot of it obviously predicated on the irons. If the par fives are more important than I think they are, he's going to be a good play. If you're looking for putting, Troy Merritt on bent greens is great on bent greens. I mean, the run he was on late last summer with the Rocket Mortgage, the 3M, I mean, that whole stretch there, he was lighting it up with the flat stick in this area. So the Memorial, he gained 8. He gained a little over 7 in the playoff loss to Cam Davis. He gained 3 the week before. And then the Fortinet, the first event of this PGA Tour season in the fall, he gained 4.5. He loves bent. He's a good putter in general. But he loves bent. He loves the wind. Take a look at Troy Merritt. Elsewhere in here, let's see. Other guys that might be kind of forgotten. I like David Lipsky at 5.5%. I like David Lipsky. Where'd he go? He's at 7 even. I like Lipsky a lot. The best play for me in here, and I'm loving the fact that he is only sitting at 6.5. He was at 6.5. There he is, 7.5. Sorry. He's sitting at 7.5% ownership. Number 10 in my rankings. Nate Lashley, I mentioned it's going to be the flag I plant and die on this week. I love me some Nate Lashley. And the reason being, not only are his baseline numbers pretty good, the bent, sure. The wind, sure. Look at this form coming in. Coming back to the Puerto Rico, so 3 months. He has missed 1 cut. It was the Heritage. It was not a good tournament, and don't get me wrong. He's got a top 10, a top 30, 2 more top 15s, and 2 more top 20s. He has very, very quietly been playing some very, very good golf. All of that mostly predicated on the irons, and that's what I prefer. So I love me some Nate Lashley this week. If the wind does play a big, big factor, he's going to get jostled around a little bit. He generally does not play the best in the wind. So, I just love me some Nate Lashley this week. So those are the 2 to 3 players I really want to highlight for you all. I'm all in on Nate Lashley. I like David Lipsky a lot. If you want to go with putting, use some Troy Merritt. Very good on bent greens. Neesmith, I like. Kisner loves this course. So there's some angles for you there. Let's move to the 6s. There are a couple of players that are getting some love in the 6s. You have Adam Long at 8%. You have Austin Smotherman at 9%. Yeah, so Austin Smotherman at 6,300. A lot of people are using. So he's semi-unique for the entire contest, but he's very chalky for this area. And I like Smotherman. He's okay. Top 15 in irons, top 10 in proximity. But you have enough. I mean, he does not play well when it's difficult. He just does not play well when it's difficult. He does not play well in the wind. Both of those should be the prevailing thing this week. So I have enough reason to, kind of stay away from Smotherman, or at least not go there if I'm trying to come down into the 6s. Let's see, some of these other players that I can kind of highlight for you all. Again, if you want to go with putting, like Troy Merritt, I don't like Denny McCarthy this week, but you can't argue he's probably one of the top 3 putters on tour. I was going to say the best. That's certainly arguable, but he's in fine form. He's made 8 cuts in a row. You see the putting. He can get hot enough. There's plenty to like here with Denny McCarthy. I'm just not there, but he plays well enough in the wind. He plays well enough when it's difficult. the irons are what take me away from Denny McCarthy. It's hard for me to overlook that. So some other players here. Kevin Streelman does not get enough love for how well he plays difficult courses. Number 6 in this field, this loaded field. Strokes gained total difficult to par. Number 11 in proximity. The irons are pretty bad. Green's good. Length of par 3s, length of par 4s. Take a look at Streelman. It's okay. Then I'm really going to highlight Kurt Kitayama. I love Kurt Kitayama this week. Number 1 at the length of the par 3s. So 3 of the 4 par 3s here fall from 175 to 200. He's number 1 in that length. He's number 10 at giving himself opportunities when it's difficult. He's good at the short par 4s. Good at par 4s in general. There's a lot to like with Kurt Kitayama. He sits at 5.5%. Like that a lot. I like Kitayama this week. And of course, it wouldn't be calls if I didn't give you one absolutely ridiculous recommendation. All the way down to the 6,000s. It's the boy we talked about a bunch Monday night. Unfortunately, it looks like P is not in chat, or else I'd be catching hell from him and giving it back to him. Take a look at Luke Donald, 6,000. Number 8 in strokes gained approach. Number 7 in proximity. Number 2 at the length of the par 3s. Now the par 5s, absolutely awful. Absolutely awful at them. So if they are important this week, it's not going to be good for Luke Donald. But he plays well enough when it's difficult. The par 4s are okay. Again, all of this is trying to be unique enough to get a 6-6 lineup through. And then from there, whatever happens, happens. So take a look at Luke Donald. Of course, I said this last week about Ju Hyun Kim, Chad Ramey. Those turned out really good. So, obviously Luke Donald's Obviously Luke Donald's going to miss the cut, and it's going to make me look like an idiot. But I am strongly suggesting looking at Luke Donald for a lineup or two. So that is a look at my mixed condition model. And before we start making some lineups here, let's look at the wind. I mentioned it earlier. I'll refresh this so we have up to the second forecast, because weather doesn't change at all. So Thursday morning, you have a little bit of wind, and then it really picks up in the afternoon and gets gusty. And then in Friday, it's pretty calm all day. Like this here is even higher than I had seen today. So when I said that I saw a split, I was seeing a pretty good Thursday AM, Friday PM split, because this was all, 2 to 3 throughout the day. Now with this refresh of the page, it's actually picked up a little bit in the afternoon, at least the forecast on Friday. So maybe there's not as much of a split as I thought. And then you can see here Saturday and Sunday, hot, breezy, gusty. We're just trying to get 6-6 through and then let the chips fall where they may. But as of right now, I do see just a slight Thursday AM, Friday PM split. But it's a lot less than I thought it was going to be, because these numbers keep rising. So if it keeps rising, Thursday AM looks like it's going to have the best conditions of Thursday, clearly. Depending on how high these numbers go, the Friday AM is going to have a pretty significant advantage, which will even itself out. So kind of all depends on if these numbers keep rising. So that's what I have for you. If you want to hedge a little bit, then I would say maybe take a lineup or two of a full Thursday AM, Friday PM split. But it was nothing like last week at the PGA. And I thought it was, because it was showing it earlier today. It was showing that this was basically flat earlier today. And now, again, Friday PM starting to rise a little bit. So makes me think that perhaps they're going to even out. But I still have a slight Thursday AM, Friday PM favored split. I did have the PGA Tour leaderboard up. I'm actually going to skip it because I don't see as much of an advantage as I had seen. So let's move to Microsoft Excel. And let's start generating some lineups, shall we? And then we come to that. All right, so in fact, let me sort this very quickly by price. Makes it easier for when we build lineups. But I will go through tiers for those who play tiers contests. I am not by any means an expert. All I can do is go by the assumed classic lineups ownership or players ownership percentage. Tiers is just not something that I play a lot of and have a lot of exposure to. So, in a tiers contests, you have tier 1, Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, and Colin Morikawa. I'm going to go Colin Morikawa. I listed the reasons why I was a little bit worried about JT, the PGA hangover effect, but all three of these plays are just fine. I'm going to take Morikawa. Tier 2, you have Jordan Spieth, Will Zalatoris, Victor Hovland, Sam Burns, and Abraham Answer. In tiers, I am completely out on Answer. I like Will Zalatoris a lot. I think Jordan Spieth's a good play. Hovland's, I think, a good play. I'm probably going to go Will Zalatoris, but I think it's between these three in tier 2. I'm going to go Zalatoris, but I think all three are fine. Tier 3, Max Homa, Sungjae, Tony Finau, Daniel Berger, and Tommy Fleetwood. Well, for the same reasons that I'm out on Berger for Classic, I'm out on Berger for tiers. Just prove health. Tommy Fleetwood kind of looks pretty good to me. As much as I liked Tony Finau in Classic, like I can't imagine Tommy Fleetwood would be widely owned in a tiers contest with these other names in there. Tommy Fleetwood's kind of talking to me a little bit in tier 3. If I don't go Fleetwood, I'll go Finau. But Tommy's speaking to me. He's talking to me. Tier 4, got Taylor Gooch, Webb Simpson, Mito, Billy Horschel, Davis Riley, and Kevin Na. Kevin Na is the you love the prior course success narrative there. Mito, again, all depends on how you feel he's going to rebound from the 72nd hole disaster. I was too low on Taylor Gooch last week. I didn't think it was going to be good for him, and the numbers don't say it's going to be good for him again this week. I kind of like Webb, but I'm probably just going to take Kevin Na, knowing that Tommy Fleetwood's a bit speculative. I'm hoping that Zalatoris is somewhat unique for tier 2. So I'll probably take Kevin Na in tier 4. Really, there's a legitimacy and a reason to avoid all of these guys. I'm going to choose Na. I like them all, and I'm okay with not using them all, if that makes sense. Tier 5, you got Jason Kokrak, defending champion, Chris Kirk, Gary Woodland, Brian Harman, HV3, Sebastian Munoz, and Justin Rose. I like all of these players except for maybe Kokrak, but then again, he's the defending champion. So if you're going to use Kevin Na, if you're going to go on the same narrative, you use Jason Kokrak. I like Chris Kirk a lot. I like Brian Harman a lot. Again, I like Harold Varner a lot, but for me personally, I have the exposure of a win ticket on him, so I'm probably not going to use him as much in a DFS contest. For me, it's probably between Justin Rose, Brian Harman, and Chris Kirk. Rose being the speculation choice. I'm probably going to go Brian Harman, but there's a very good reason to go Chris Kirk. There's a very good reason to go Justin Rose. Not to say Gary Woodland's a bad choice either. Munoz is fine. I'm only ignoring HV3 personally because I have the win ticket on him. I think HV3 is a fine play as well. But for me, I would go either Rose, Kirk, or Harman. I'm leaning Harman. Tier 6, you got Hoagie, Bezadenhout, Cameron Tringale, Maverick McNeely, Kevin Kisner, Ricky Fowler, and Patrick Reed. Patrick Reed's been showing some signs of life. Still not ready to commit to him being back to Patrick Reed. I'm just off McNeely this week. Kisner, again, a former champion like Kevin Na, Jason Carter, the defending champion. Like this is like Noah Kokrak Kisner is the bottom half of your tiers team if you want to go on past course success. I kind of like Kisner this week, to be honest, but I'm probably going Tringali. I just think he is getting overlooked a little bit. He loves it when it's tough. I'm going to go Tringali. So there's a look at tiers lineups. Let's start building some classic lineups to combat the big GPPs and such. So we start with a pretty chalky-ish lineup here. And if you're going to go the chalky of chalk, you're going to have to check the chalkiest option. And that is Mr. Jordan Spieth. So sorry if you hear the pins rattling a little bit, but Jordan Spieth. So with him there, depending on how their team's going to be built, I would imagine if they're going Spieth, they're going to have to come down to an Austin Smotherman, but that is saving them a whole lot of money. And I only use Smotherman. Yes, he's 8.7%, but he's the chalkiest of the 6Ks. So if that's their defined boundary, they've got a lot of wiggle room here. I'd imagine if they're using Smotherman, they're not even toying anything less than, say, maybe Tom Hoagie at 76. They're probably putting Brian Harman in this list as well. Still got 9,000 per, 9,000 Berger, and Tommy Fleetwood's right at it. So yeah, I mean this looks like a pretty generic looking team here. It's at a little under 14.5%. A decent team, but one that I'm not excited about. I know how chalky Spieth is. I'm just out on Berger. Your fellow contestants don't seem to be. Tommy Fleetwood, I like, but I don't have to rush to use him. I do like Brian Harman a lot. I like Hoagie, like Smotherman. But if they're going to go in a different direction, because nobody's in the low 7Ks, so it looks like fellow contestants are probably bottoming out at CT Pan, who's at a little over 11, and doing a Tom Hoagie. I hate to use similar style names, but this is just what your contestants are doing. Actually, you know what? Just to use a different names here. Let's just say they go something to the effect of Munoz and Harold Varner. Why not? All these guys are getting some love. So if they do that, you can see they only average 9,000 per. So that's why I'd say your fellow contestants, if they're not coming down at all into the low sevens, they're going to have to top out at Victor Hovland, and they might not even be able to do that because now they're at 8,500 per. Yeah, they could do it. It's Mito and Davis Riley. So here's a little bit less common of a lineup, but it's a pure balance build of Hovland, Mito, Davis Riley, and these three in the upper to mid sevens. Still fairly chalky, but it seems like the shell of a balanced team your fellow contestants are making. So if we want to combat that, I really do like the idea of a balanced team this week. And I'm not the highest on Sam Burns, so honestly what I might do, I might just completely go like Sungjae, Finau. I like Tommy, but I don't mind using a Webb Simpson either. Then coming into, say, maybe a Mito. And I'm okay with using a couple of these lower sevens. Like I mentioned how much I love Nate Lashley. He's at 71. And then, in the 7,300s, it's Matthew Neesmith. You've got Eric Van Rooyen at 73. Troy Merritt, if you want to believe in the putting. 72, you got Aaron Rai, generally pretty reliable. I'm gonna throw in Troy Merritt just for the sake of it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I mean there's a lineup that's at less than 10%, and combating that balanced team that we saw, and I'm able to squeeze in 4 players that are above 8,500 because I'm willing to come into the low sevens where your fellow contestants aren't. So, and if you're not comfortable with an Nate Lashley, maybe you're willing to come down into the high six for we didn't talk about him, Russell Knox. Anytime I use Russell Knox, he just disappoints me. But the numbers say irons and wind, he should be good. Patton Kazire at Texas, he should be good. Kevin Streelman's at 68, he should be good. And then let's try to make a stars and scrubs look here. I'm going to go Scotty Scheffler and Will Zalatoris. Again, hoping that this is going to be unique enough in the stars and scrubs. And now, yes, I mentioned Luke Donald, who I really liked at 6,000. I'm not going to go 6,000 for you all. Like, I would do it, but for you all, let's be somewhat reasonable. I like Kitayama at 64, so we'll use Kitayama in this. So if we go Kurt Kitayama, and then depending on how low you're willing to go on your second one, maybe you're okay with a Kevin Streelman or a Nate Lashley in the low sevens. This to me is kind of the pivotal part of this shell. This will depend on who these two players are. It depends on if you're willing to use 2 6Ks, or if you need the quote, the more stability of a 7. But with Kevin Streelman here, you have 7,700 basically per. You can pick like a Brian Harmon and feel okay about it because you're pretty darn unique so far. So you can pick a Brian Harmon if you feel great about it. You can even go higher if you really like Kevin Na and his past performance here. You can go Kevin Na and do a 7,400 of a Kevin Kisner or a Ricky Fowler, Patrick Reed. If you like somebody else I really like, Cameron Tringali. If you come to Cameron Tringali, that's right at 8,000. Bubba Watson's withdrawn, but that's a Chris Kirk or a Gary Woodland. You're at less than 9% projected ownership with a pretty chalky Chris Kirk in there. And of course, if you don't want to use Scheffler, he's the highest price. If you come off Scheffler, if you come to say maybe Morikawa, going to be a little bit more chalky, but frees up quite a bit more money that you can maybe not have to use a second 6K. So there is a look at some of the lineups that I've been toying around with this week for the Charles Schwab. Joey, thanks for jumping in chat and watching like you always do. And for everyone else out there that has taken the time to watch and listen, I really appreciate the support. I enjoy it. Yeah, you just missed it, P. You're going to have a fun little time re-listening to it. Your boy Luke Donald has been mentioned maybe a couple of times, and giving you a nice little shout out when he has been brought up. But that was a look at a couple of the lineups that I've been toying around with. And again, thanks for all the support. P, I'm sorry you missed it. You caught the outro essentially. But in the comments of the show, of the video, let me know how you do this week. I really want to hear it. Did you use a Luke Donald at 6,000? Did you use a Kurt Kitayama at 6,400? Did you build the balanced lineup that seems to be pretty chalky, or did you try to maneuver around it? Let me know. And then I also want to know if you think you know the 10 players that I put out there for the criteria and social media. I'll be curious to see how much research rabbit hole that I went down. Did I go too much? Did I not do enough? Be interested to hear that. So thanks again for tuning in for all of the wagers you've made this week at the Charles Schwab, for all of your contests that you've entered this week for the Charles Schwab, for this weekend and every weekend. May all your bets be profitable.